As always, some subject matter in this video is disturbing and viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you would like to send my way, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, meowdy partner. This happened many years ago, but it was such a terrifying moment for me that I still remember it vividly. Back when I was about 13 or 14, my family, which consisted of my parents, me, my little sister, and our dog, had to live in a hotel for about a month while our home was being repaired due to flooding. Being a teenage girl at the time, spending most of my time in the same room as my parents was not my idea of fun. Thankfully, I was able to bring some of my stuff to keep me entertained, and there was also a pool so I could go swimming whenever I wanted to. However, it was also a prime opportunity to stay over with friends because they rarely told me no. I wish I would have stayed with someone on this particular day though. That way I could have just avoided this whole situation. It was a Saturday, and while my dad still worked, my mom was home with me and my sister until she needed to run errands. I wasn't interested at the time with having to go to a bunch of places, as I knew I would probably just get stuck with watching my sister. So I asked if I could stay at the hotel. After a few pleas, she reluctantly agreed, telling me not to answer the door for anyone as she would have the key. Dad left his in the room in case we needed it, since Mom was always back before he got home. She did say that I could go to the pool since I'd been down there to swim by myself before. So, after the list of do's and don'ts, she finally left. I probably stayed in the room for about an hour or so, playing my DS and watching TV, until I started getting bored. Since I could only use the hotel phone for emergencies, my mom had her cell phone in the hotel charged for phone calls. My next plan was to go swimming for a bit. I changed into my swimsuit and put my cover up on, and then left the room with nothing but a towel and the room key. Thankfully, there weren't many people there. There was a woman with her baby and a kid maybe a few years younger than me playing. Then a group of, 4 old people in the hot tub just talking. Lastly, there was a guy sitting close to the back door working on some kind of puzzle book. I had wrapped my room key in my towel and set it on one of the chairs off to the side, hoping that no one would bother it. I'd seen multiple people grab towels from anywhere nearby the towel cart that they kept in there, so I always worried that they would take mine by mistake, and then I would lose the room key. I got in the pool by taking the stairs, which was where the mom and the kid were hanging out, and then slowly walked over to the deeper side. I liked going over there and either just floating around or swimming back and forth to each side. However, the deeper I went, the closer I got to the guy with the puzzle book. And that's how I noticed that he was staring at me. When I would come up for air or just glance over, he was always looking at me, and would just smile. After the first time, though, I stopped smiling back. I may have been shy, but something about his smile was unsettling. I tried my best to just have fun, but that feeling in my stomach was not going away. I think the mom in the pool even noticed as I would look around at anything I could, just to stop myself from looking at him. And I noticed how she kept looking past her baby at him. That feeling would then intensify when I noticed the guy stand up and start walking towards the pool. And of all the places to get into the pool, the stairs or the ladder on the deepest side, he chose to stop and sit on the edge of the pool with his feet dangling in it, right where I was. After he sat down, the only thing he said was, "Hey, young lady, mind if I jump in?" The words may have been innocent, but it was something about his inflection, and the way that he said it that nearly gave me a panic attack. I was at a loss of words, or even action to take, so I just looked away and swam to the other side of the pool, and then jumped over the edge to get out. My chair was close to the door, so I quickly grabbed it all, and without even trying to dry off or put on my cover, I swung the door open and rushed out of there. I know that I may have already seemed like someone who was in a hurry or something, but I thought I would just fast walk to the elevator to get there quicker, but also not look like I was running away, I guess. I was 14. I didn't know what to do. However, that feeling in my gut intensified more when I heard the pool door open, and out walks this same guy. You just went to get into the pool. Why would you be leaving it and your stuff behind? Tell me that that doesn't scream that he was trying to follow someone. So I picked up the pace and ran to the elevator, jamming the button until it finally opened. But this guy was still pretty close behind me, and now waving and yelling at me to hold the elevator. Like hell I was going to do that. So I started jamming the button to close the door faster. I figured if I could get in the elevator alone, it would be safer than taking the stairs that were enclosed and someone not being able to see or possibly hear me if something did happen. I didn't factor in the odds of him being capable of catching up to me, stopping the elevator, and being enclosed in the metal box with me, which was exactly what happened. My heart was pounding. I stood as close as I could to the door, but with my back against the wall. That way he wasn't behind me and was within my vision. That's when he started going on about how rude it was for me to not hold the door for someone, especially when they ask you to. He just seemed incredibly angry for something so simple, and also towards a child. It startled me even more. I didn't know what else to do, but I clutched my stuff closer to my chest and remained quiet. When he realized he wasn't getting a response from me, he started asking about what room I was in, and if I was alone, or if my parents knew where I was. This was already causing anxiety to pile up, but then I realized he never pushed a button on the elevator. I did. So now, I was worried that he at least knew what floor I was on. As soon as it stopped and the doors were just open enough to fit myself through, I took off. I was terrified of the thought of him once again catching up to me, and what if he did as I was entering the room? My mom probably wasn't back yet, so I would be alone. So, trying to think fast, I ran as far as I could to the end of the hall and started banging on a random door, hoping for the best. I remember shouting, "Dad, I forgot my key, open the door." While looking back, I noticed the guy was still coming towards me, but at a slower pace. What I wasn't expecting was an actual older man in his boxers and a shirt to open the door and look at me confused. I, again, was hesitant about running in this room, so I just looked down and softly said, "There's a man following me." I apparently said it loud enough for him to hear, as he walked out of the room shouting, "What kind of grown man is following around little girls?" The creep was standing in a room a few doors down and had just looked over at us. The older man started approaching him and confronted him, again asking why he was following me, when the guy said that there was obviously a misunderstanding. He claimed that he was just trying to get to his room, which happened to be on the same floor that I went, and it must have scared me. I guess I was feeling a little brave, so I mentioned him being at the pool and what he had said in the elevator. The old man actually stuck around and told him that he better go to his room. The creep patted down his pockets and wiggled the doorknob and looked back at us and said, "Oh, I must have dropped my key," and walked off back towards the elevator. I still highly doubt that that was actually his room, and he was just standing by to see what happened. I felt the old man was pretty close to knocking that guy out. After he was out of sight, the man started asking me if I knew that guy and what happened, and while we were talking, another lady and a kid walked out of their room. I assume it was like a grandparents and grandkids situation. They then walked me to my room, which was actually around the corner, about midway up the hall. When I got there, my mom ended up coming back shortly after. I told her what had happened, and she immediately went to inform the front desk. Unfortunately, the only part that I really know about that was that they told my mom they would check to see who was in that room and get back to her if they found out anything. The thing is, we were there for another week, and daily my mom would ask them and they wouldn't tell her anything. They had a bit of an argument at that point, and whoever was there at the time told my mom that it wouldn't make a difference because they didn't actually do anything to me, and they couldn't kick them out if they already paid. This made my parents angry enough that we left that hotel and went to another one for the rest of our time. So, we never did see that creep again, thankfully. I don't know what his actual intentions were, but I try not to think about that stuff. I just avoid being alone in places like hotels, and where there may not be a lot of people or witnesses around from that moment onward. I just hope that he was never able to terrorize another kid like that again. After listening to your podcast, I realized that I too had experienced a series of strange events that I couldn't quite wrap my head around to explain. This incident occurred when I was still living in my parents' house about 8 years ago, in 2015. It actually happened a few times, but one instance seemed the most vivid and realistic of them all. My parents' house, situated in a third-world country within a bustling city, was rather narrow and consisted of 2 floors. Consequently, we shared a bedroom on the 2nd floor. To provide a clearer picture of the story, allow me to describe the room's layout. The room was nearly square in shape, featuring a sliding door on the eastern wall with foggy glass, enabling you to perceive a person's shadow in the hallway. Upon entering, your gaze would be met by a metal bunk bed. I occupied the top bunk, while my mother claimed the bottom. Adjacent to the bunk bed, my father's bed was positioned at a 90-degree angle. If you were on the top bunk, you could only see the upper section of the sliding door. As for the floor, the lower bunk, as well as my father's bed, they were hidden from view. Given that my father's work frequently required him to travel out of town several times each month, he happened to be away on a work trip that particular night. In contrast, my mother managed a small shop downstairs, so she was usually in close proximity to the house. On occasion, she would come up to the bedroom later than I went to sleep. That night, after completing my homework, I turned off all the lights except for a softly glowing bedside lamp. I then ascended to my bunk bed to chat with my Facebook friends before drifting off to sleep. Well, there was a house rule of prohibiting me from bringing my phone to bed. I remained on high alert, ready to hastily conceal it should my mother enter the room. About an hour later, I discerned the faint sound of my mother's footsteps, followed immediately by the sliding door gliding open and shut. Swiftly, I powered down my phone and slid it beneath my pillow, pretending to sleep. I heard the bed creaking beneath the weight of my mother, accompanied by the rustling of bed sheets. In an attempt to sound drowsy, I inquired, "Mom, why are you coming up so late?" Her response was a mixture of groaning and shifting on the bed, suggesting that she might be unwell or extremely fatigued. Slightly concerned, I sat up to check up on her. However, as I did so, I noticed a faint illumination in the hallway, indicating that the lights on the first floor were still on. "Looks like you forgot to turn off the downstairs light, Mom," I quipped, alluding to her usual annoyance when I neglected to turn off lights in my room. Curiously, she didn't reply on this occasion. Exhaling audibly, I descended from the bunk bed to head downstairs and extinguish the light. As I cast a glance towards my mother, I expected to see her wrapped in blankets, ready with an excuse for the oversight. To my absolute astonishment, however, the bottom bunk was empty. Baffled, I began to remove pillows and blankets in disbelief, but she was nowhere to be found. Simultaneously, I heard footsteps downstairs, accompanied by the illumination of another light. Anxious to uncover the truth, I rushed downstairs to be met by my very much present mother. Her voice fatigued as she asked, "What's going on? Isn't it your bedtime?" Striving to mask my growing panic, I asked, "Were you downstairs working all this time?" She shrugged and replied, "Yeah, I had to finish a commission quickly for a customer tomorrow." Urgently, I then inquired, "Are you absolutely certain you weren't just upstairs?" Amused, she retorted with, "Come on, do you think I have the energy to run up and down at this time?" It was around 11:30 p.m. as I glanced over at the clock. With a nod, I watched as she went to use the bathroom on the first floor. Feeling bewildered, I hurriedly returned upstairs. That night, sleep eluded me, and I found myself repeatedly checking the bottom bunk to verify my mother's presence. While the memory eventually faded, it resurfaced sporadically whenever I recounted ghost stories to my friends. However, the inexplicable occurrences did not end there. On several subsequent occasions, I thought I heard my father's footsteps right outside the door, with a faded shadow, even when he was away. Sometimes the creaking and rustling of the bedsheets in my mother's usual spot when she wasn't there, but no groaning voices unlike that one time. It could be noises in the neighborhood misinterpreted, but as any growing child would, I became adept at identifying individual family members' footsteps, and even motorbike engines. I mentioned it to my mom one time, but she just chalked it up to me having a dream or a sleep paralysis episode. The peculiar noises ceased once I moved out in 2018. What makes a town idyllic? At what point does a town cross the line from being dark to becoming dreamy? The truth is, it's a lot more nuanced than simply good or bad. Sometimes the most picturesque of towns can hold secrets that potentially outweigh all the perfect things, if you only knew about them. Longtime viewers of Raven's channel may remember the story I submitted about Greg, the Stain of Hollywood. If not, that's alright. I'll recap the events of that summer. Greg was well known in Hollywood. A nice guy, a great rugby player, generally an all-around decent person who you'd want to meet. Turns out, he was also an active predator and stalker in the background. My friend Matt nearly fell victim to his vile grasp, barely able to escape. After finding this out, we severed all connections between us, our friends, and him. The stories spread across the town's youth rapidly, though the names were lost somewhere in the wildfire. A month or so after our last sighting of Greg, we realized something. While we hadn't seen him in a month, he definitely had seen us. The deeply disturbing discovery of him stalking us, or more accurately, Matt, was a gut-wrenching feeling that I will never forget. This all happened around early to mid-2020. Raven read this story on his channel a year later, in 2021. Unfortunately, I wrote it only a few months before some pretty major events. Greg had been arrested for the possession of drugs. I'm unsure what it was, but I've heard it was something heavy. He got beaten up later on by some people in this year. He changed everything about himself. His hair, his legal name, his school, his house, his friends, and even his gender identity. While I've been using the pronoun of he, him up until now, I'll be using the preferred pronouns of they, them. While Greg might be a vile abortion of a human, misgendering them is an insult to perfectly normal, non-binary people. This radical change in identity was likely due to the fact that their own cousin discovered my post about them on Reddit. He told his family, who I can only imagine disowned them. Over the past 3 years, Greg, or Axel, as they are now called, was largely unseen by the people of Hollywood. Whether they moved away or just remained in the shadows of Hollywood is unclear. However, every few months, I'd be told by one of my friends that they saw them. They became a druggie, always hanging out in dark places and doing hard drugs. Every time I was told of a Greg sighting, we still call them Greg so that everyone is on the same page during discussions about them, I would be told of how they currently looked. It seemed like they were constantly changing their hairstyle and sense of style. Whether this constant identity change was a result of Matt and I, or their drug problem, is unknown. This was pretty much the story up until recently. An open-ended cautionary tale about who you decide to trust. But, in the past month, some awful stuff has gone down, which I will tell you now. This summer, in Hollywood, and many surrounding towns has been nicknamed the Stoner Summer. This is, in case the name is unclear, referring to the fact that almost everyone who hadn't tried weed before summer now had. While I personally had used it recreationally a few times, I was also sucked into it and smoked the divine grass a few too many times. And of course, with weed to smoke comes a place to be. With the blatant illegality of grass, it's no surprise that you need to smoke it somewhere away from people. A very common place was, unfortunately, Glen Lyon. This forest was the breeding ground for Greg to enact upon their despicable desires. It wasn't rare to take a few steps into the forest and smell grass. In fact, I bumped into several people who barely even bothered to find a secluded place. In retrospect, if I found them near where I wanted to smoke, my spots likely weren't any more hidden. My friend, who I'll call Ryan, was already up in Glen Lyon. My other friend Patrick was in Glen Lyon walking his dogs. While I may be friends with both, the two of them are not very close. They come from two very different lifestyles, and could never really see eye to eye on anything. Despite this, there was no bad blood between them. They just never really saw each other as friends. They accidentally bumped into each other that day. With Ryan's state of mind, he decided to walk with Patrick and the dogs around the forest for a bit. It was quite late, and nobody else was in the forest. At least, they thought that. A good bit into the woods, they noticed someone with their hood up walking towards them. With the stranger's build and distinctly red-colored hair, both Patrick and Ryan instantly knew that it was Greg. They stopped dead in their tracks, which is likely what caused Greg to stop and look at them. I'm sure that Greg knew that Patrick and I were friends, and I wouldn't be surprised if they knew I was friends with Ryan. Despite the darkness, I was told by both of them that they saw Greg's face, revealing pretty grim teeth, all yellow and some even decaying. What Greg did next still haunts me. They grabbed their knife, which apparently they carry around everywhere, and held it up as if they were going to throw it. Of course, my friends ran backwards. When Patrick looked back, he saw that Greg was still holding the knife, prepared to throw. Patrick flinched as Greg appeared to throw it. A moment later, Patrick looked back to realize they didn't throw it. Ryan looks back and Greg does it again. Greg was pretending to throw this knife at them, likely to scare them. Whatever drugs they were on, they clearly messed them up even worse than they were before. Patrick and Ryan still ran. When I was told of this story, I didn't believe it. A ghost from our past coming back to haunt us? Ryan has a history of making up fake stories, so I thought he was making it all up to scare me. A dick move, sure, but not something unheard of when it comes to this guy. Yet, he persisted on it being true. So, of course, I phoned Patrick, who backed up the story almost word for word. I was disturbed, but I'm not 13 anymore and Matt's not 11. If Greg's back for whatever reason, they're no longer a threat to us. But they are a threat to the younger children of Hollywood. Rowan, a key figure in the original incident, even told me that they sometimes hang out with an 8-year-old boy, and nobody questions it. That's the thing with small, perfect towns like Hollywood. Bad things are so unheard of that even when the evidence is right there in front of people's noses, nobody bats an eye. With what I had been told, I decided to keep a weary eye out for Greg. A few nights later, I was walking down to my local Tesco's when I saw them. They didn't see me, so I kept my head down and walked into the shop. I prayed that I hadn't been seen. I picked up what I had wanted to buy, bought it, and then left. As I walked down the street, looking around to see if Greg was there, I saw them. They were standing on the pavement that I was walking on, staring straight at me. My heart skipped a beat when I saw them. I turned around and started walking backwards, deciding to go a slightly longer way rather than walk past them. I kept telling myself not to look behind me, but there got to a point where I couldn't control it. I glanced backwards, only to see that they were following me. I broke into a sprint, something I could hardly do considering the amount of weed I had smoked over that week. I could hear them running behind me. Now, I'm a fast runner. I could easily outrun them back to my house. The only issue was that the route I had taken would force me to go either through a normal road or a dingy, slippery river path called Twizzle Bridge. In the dark after a rainstorm, Twizzle Bridge is a death wish. The stone steps are mossy, and one misstep will lead you crashing into the river below. Obviously then, I would pick the normal road. As I got to the corner that would bring me onto that road, my stomach sank. There was heavy maintenance going on, completely blocking every way to get across. There likely was a single pathway as there normally is, but I didn't see it. It was dark and my mind was preoccupied. Even if the road was inaccessible, Twizzle Bridge was not a viable option. As I ran, I began to formulate a plan. I would hide somewhere until Greg ran past, before sneaking back through Twizzle Bridge. I ran for what felt like miles, yet I knew it was hardly 500 meters. There truly was nowhere to hide. I saw the entrance to a park called Ballymennick. I went there a lot when I was younger, so I knew the paths off by heart. If I was going to hide somewhere, then this would be it. I looked behind me, and I saw that I had at least 50 meters on them. I ran into the park and started running through the trees. I cut my arms at least 50 times, and bumped into at least 20 trees, but despite the pain, I continued running until I was certain that I was clear of them. I heard Greg run into the wooded area that I was in, slowing down. They were looking for me. I crouched down behind a large tree. I relied on the sound of Greg's footsteps to know where they were. And then they talked. "Ollie, stop hiding." They kept walking around. "I don't want to hurt you. I just want to talk about what happened. I'm really sorry. I messed up. I just need you to forgive me." There was a remarkable sincerity in his voice, which was overshadowed by the fact that he had threatened my mates with a knife and was chasing me around Hollywood. Once I determined they were walking the wrong way, I slowly crept the other way until I saw the path again. I got onto the path and quietly walked towards the entrance. I looked back to make sure that Greg wasn't nearby, and then started running again. I got to Twizzle Bridge, where I turned my flashlight on and carefully walked down the steps. Once I was out of Twizzle Bridge, I instantly called the police. I had no evidence, which, back in 2020, was the reason we hadn't phoned them yet. Yet I knew that with everyone who had experienced the events as they had unfolded, maybe the police could at least try to do something. An officer came to me, while the rest went to Ballymenic to look for Greg. I told the officer everything from the start until now. I explained every detail with the exception of what Ryan was doing out in Glen Lyon that late at night. The next day, Matt, Patrick, Ryan, Rowan, and I were all brought to the police station just out of Hollywood to ask us questions about what had happened. With all of our stories matching, I think they believed us. I was told that they didn't find them in Ballymenic the night before, but they would be looking for them. It's been a month and I've heard nothing of it, though I nor any of my friends have seen them since. Unfortunately, that's the end of the story. I doubt that I'll ever see Greg again, which is a good thing, but the story isn't just about Greg. It's about people like them who hide in the shadowy cracks of small, idyllic towns, lurking around. Greg was around my age now when they first revealed their true nature. Now that I'm as old as they were, it sickens me even more to think about what must have been going on inside their head. Greg is mentally unstable, which was likely worsened by their drug issues. Deep inside is probably still the same kid, who always treated people with respect, played rugby with his mates, knew almost everyone in town, but that kid is dead. Because whatever Greg is now is completely different to that kid. And so, as I finish writing this, I want to ask you all something. How well do you know your town? People have secrets, and small towns like mine are the perfect places to keep those secrets, to either spread rapidly or fade away into obscurity as those responsible for heinous acts carry on living life with no chance of ever being finally and satisfyingly reprehended. This is the craziest thing to ever happen to me, and I live in Baltimore. Just to explain, I say the Baltimore joke because I've seen murders, bodies, kidnapped at gunpoint as a teen, and more. But this messed with my head more than all that. This happened to me and my friend when I was about 17 or 18, and is the only paranormal thing that has ever happened to me. I've been thinking about this experience more and more, and I don't know why. It's so crazy that it's unbelievable, and I wouldn't blame you for doubting it, but people who know me know that I don't lie about stuff. Might be a little bit of a read, but maybe you'll find it interesting. So, here goes. So, living in Baltimore, there is a place called Loch Raven Reservoir, and it's out in the sticks. It's quick to get to, though. Baltimore is weird like that. 10 minutes one way, woods, 10 minutes the next way, the ghetto. So, we would drive out to Loch Raven and smoke while driving the empty country road. While on those roads is a turnoff to a park. It's been a while, but I'm kind of sure that it's Cromwell Park. And it's not the kind of park you think. It's more just woods with trails. And you can only get there by driving. Roads way too small and dangerous to walk. Well, me and my friend went there one night to smoke. It was about 1 a.m. and we were parked in the parking lot, which again is just a few spots for cars made from gravel. In front, behind, and to the right are trees leading to nothing but more woods. To the left, I'm driving, is a field. The field goes a little more than the football field, I would say, and a football field wide until, you guessed it, more trees. Yes, very good. So, we have a CD case that I'm breaking the stuff up on while my friend prepares the blunt. It's pretty dark out, except for some moon and starlight shining, and I just look to my left, and on the edge of the field where the trees start, I see what appears to be someone with the flashlight. It's far away, so I'm not worried about it, and I just say something to my friend like, "What the hell is someone doing in the woods all the way out here at this time?" I continue breaking it up, and when I'm done, I pass it over to my friend. He dumps it and rolls it, and we lay the CD on the dash. While I'm waiting, I look to my left again, and now the light's up in a tree. Not real high, just a few feet. So I comment again. Why is someone climbing trees at this time in the middle of nowhere? He's just like, hell if I know. And then we start to hear some pops going off. Now, I'm like, okay, he's lighting fireworks off. That's weird. The pops keep happening more and more. I had no idea that all hell was about to break loose. I'm looking over there, and the flashlight turns off, and the pops keep going. For some reason, I had a thought, and when I thought it, my stomach got that scared feeling. And I said out loud to my friend, getting the goosebumps thinking about this, "Why can't we see the fireworks going off?" At that exact moment, the explosions got super loud and traveled across the field toward us, like a string of explosions coming at us. It made it across the field in probably 3 to 4 seconds. The car was engulfed in explosions. I could feel them in my guts like fireworks. The CD case vibrates off the dash, and they're just going off like crazy. My friend, who's been through some stuff in his life, his mom stabbed his dad in his sleep while he was in the next room as a 13-year-old, so he's not easy to scare. But he's in tears, freaking out, begging me to leave, just absolutely pleading. I'm saying no. I want to know what the hell is happening. I turned my car back on because I felt bad for this kid in tears, and I was gonna leave, but it all stopped as soon as the car turned on. I remember him saying that it sounded like a stampede of horses going around the car. The area had fights from the Revolutionary War and redcoats and bluecoats in that area, and it was known for being sympathetic to the redcoats, and battles being fought in the area. I can't say that's what it was, or ghosts, or what, just saying that's what came to mind. I emailed the park 10 or so years later, and I asked if anyone has ever said anything about anything paranormal to them before. And they said no. Not one thing, ever. To this day, I'm left perplexed at what the hell happened that night. It's mind-blowing. I thought only movies had this kind of stuff, but since then, I am way more open-minded. I still believe a lot of people lie, or are just crazy. I hear stories on here where I think, bro, come on, you're full of it or need help, but this is what happened to me. Believe it or not, I don't care, but it's the only thing to ever happen to me. And I felt the urge to tell someone. So, thanks for reading, if you did. This poster left 2 stories. Story 1. I'm a Titanic enthusiast. If there are any exhibitions on, I will go and view what's on show. When I went and watched the film, more than once, I came out so angry at what allegedly happened. To this day, I think I was on that ship in a past life. Before I go on, condolences to the families of the people lost in that mini sub-accident. There, for the grace of God, go, because if I won a lot of money, I would spend it to go to see that wreck. Anyways, a few years ago, whilst in Las Vegas, the exhibition with The Big Piece was on at the Luxor. So, off I went. I got my ticket and I went. Now, I'm used to air-conditioned buildings, but the second I walked in, it just gave me the creeps. The longer I stayed, the worse it got. I was really glad to get back outside just to get the chill out of my bones. Story 2. I had cause a few years ago to go to Los Angeles. A couple of times on my trip, I went to Long Beach and did the Queen Mary tours. Well worth the money. Upon finishing both the normal and ghost tours, I wandered out onto the deck. The second I was there, it felt like someone was standing right behind me. I glanced back, but of course there was no one there. The feeling got worse and worse, so much so that I nearly ran off the ship. I live about 30 minutes from the beach, and decided to take a drive there nearing nighttime to help center myself. I've been in a bit of a bad place emotionally, and in general. In the past few months, a lot of big life changes have happened. My longtime partner and I very recently broke up, and this has been the hardest of all. This beach spot is a place that we spent a lot of time together, and with friends, and it felt like a safe space for me. Part of me sees us getting back together down the line, but no matter what I need to try to navigate this part of my life right now. Anyway, I just really connected with this location, and felt really peaceful, and happy, and hopeful towards the next chapter of my life, which is saying a lot, since I've been very depressed. It was around 5 p.m. when I showed up, and as I made my way down the rather long beach path, I saw 8 rabbits, at all distances, in different parts of the crossing sand roads. I counted because I was shocked to see any. For years, I've really connected with the symbol of the rabbit, and have on rare occasions had them cross my path when I needed them to. After spending a few hours on the beach, watching the sun go down and the moon shine, I wrote some intentions in the sand, and let the ocean wipe them away. It was beautiful. As I walked down the long path again to head back to my car, I saw 8 frogs, and then a shooting star. I'm just surprised. I've never seen more than 3 of these things at a time. I've always connected with frogs as well. I don't know what's up with these things, and the number 8 specifically tonight, but I felt at peace. I wonder if any of you have any insights on such things. So that, my friends, was a collection of true scary stories from you. That is scary stories from subscribers only. Kind of. 2 of these were from Reddit. That, my friends, was a collection of true scary stories from you. You being people out there that exist. Everyday people who submit their stories or post their stories online for others like us. And, yeah, just, some good stories. And honestly, I think it makes them more terrifying whenever you realize that these are stories from everyday people. These aren't... I mean, all my stories are from everyday people. What am I saying anymore? These are true scary stories from people. People wrote these and sent them my way, or posted them. Thank you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed these stories. My brain is flying all over the place. I've had a bit of a headache all day, though, so that's probably what's kicking my back end. I'm going to wrap this video up and then go to the store and get something to eat for dinner before everything else happens today, so there's that. If you did enjoy the stories, friends, please do hit that thumbs up button. It helps tremendously. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing, as that helps tremendously. If you're really feeling bold, you can go down below and leave me a comment letting me know your thoughts, because that helps tremendously. You can also send me a story if you got one by going to astheravendreams.com or r/theravensdream on Reddit if you want to go there instead. And if you send me your story, I'll figure out a place to put it. And it also helps tremendously. Yeah. You can also share the video if you know somebody who likes narrations like this, and that helps tremendously. You can also leave a comment down below saying, "Hey Raven, you're tremendous." That helps tremendously. Joining Patreon, early access to content like this, depending on how you sign up. You can also do a super thanks, which is just a tip to the channel, and it helps tremendously. Tremendously no longer feels like a word. I hope you're all feeling that too, because I'm just like, why am I still saying this? I hope you all are having a beautiful day, and I hope I do see you again here soon. But please remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important. You're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my lovely friends, much love, and sleep well.